user shares that might come from our user group community before going into our main event. So I'm going to jump ahead. I stole some slides from Steve. One thing we always like to remind folks about and share is some of the great resources those in our community have experienced in learning Power BI. I sent the slide deck into the chat. The link should work for everybody to kind of view if you want to get to these links. But we have several sources, mostly YouTubers that have some great material that we like to endorse here. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you use the slide deck, all three of these are great, as well as some more local reinforcements. The Power BI tips area is actually our Milwaukee user group, and Craig Wagner is located in Milwaukee, who's done some speeches, representations here before. So these are all
That'd be Chris Wagner, Paul.
Not Craig Wagner, it's Chris Wagner.
Chris Wagner.
Shame on me. All right. So Steve, you really love these two. Did I leave anything out that you want to point out?
No, that's good.
All right. The next piece is some user shares. We like to give opportunities within our user group to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes to talk about something new and interesting they have been doing with Power BI. And I've bugged a few out there in the user community to see if those have something they can share, talk through. Is there someone who is willing to step up today that I was bugging earlier the last 2 weeks? Anyone? No one's jumping forward. All right, then I'm going to jump in and do one myself. So what we have been doing at my company, I'm Paul Van Dyke. I'm at ProAmpac. I'm a senior BI analyst, and we've been working through Power BI for the last couple of years. And a new thing that recently came out that's got us inspired is Power BI goals. For those of you who haven't heard of this feature, they announced it within the last month in May. And it is the feature that ties in some more dashboard-like effects to be able to display goal-based metrics on a page and link in many metrics from around your Power BI tenant. You can bring into this goals-based scorecard metrics from all over different reports, and you can type in values. So this could become a tracking tool that starts manual, and then as data is available in the Power BI area, can pull from any particular visual and start to create a goal, a measure versus a goal type scorecard. In our company, manufacturing, we have been rolling out more and more Power BI based reports. We have people inside dealing with their own data, and they really jumped on the idea of this kind of scorecard. For example, just earlier this week, this is a live example of what it tends to look like. What you're seeing here is I'm in the Power BI service for my company in a workspace that is a health and safety organization for our entire Fox Valley set of plants. And they've started playing around with this. This is some rough numbers and a scorecard format. Each of the numbers here can be typed into, or if you're in here editing, you can link to a particular visual metric from another report. And it has the potential to track that over time. You can see little spark lines. In this case, this is a breakdown within a particular location and down to particular departments on track with various safety measures, target versus actuals. Notes can be recorded, and this is kind of a living document that then can be bubbled up. Each of the metrics that comes from a report has a link here to take you back to the original report that's pulling in that metric if it's tied to that report. So this has a lot of interest in our area. It's really new. It's kind of bleeding edge, but I wanted to share it because in the 3 years I've been working with Power BI and ProAmpac as a company, this kind of high level bubble up some metrics existed in the world of perhaps building a Power BI dashboard, but dashboards were not something that tracked as well as goals, and were not where you can edit the actual numbers if you really wanted to just have something manual to start with and tie in data later. So this is a very interesting feature. I encourage people to check it out. And if there's more to share on that front, if anyone even has already done more, speak up now, because we're just playing around with this.
Paul, I got a question regarding this.
Yes. Yeah.
The spark line on here, because I saw them go through this in a presentation. Is that are those like daily points that are tracked, or is that coming from something that you have?
I believe so. I think what happens, the scorecard kind of keeps track of its numbers on a kind of daily basis as you edit. So
okay,
provides that kind of ties to the report, takes like a daily snapshot, or as you edit it, it keeps track of that snapshot.
And is this only at the premium level?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's only premium, which is frustrating.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Yep.
Just in your had to add that bit about premium in there.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
It does work on premium per user though as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I toyed around with it a little bit, and we have just a handful of premium per users so I did see it in there. I didn't know if it was at premium or not only. Right. So thanks.
Excellent. Any other questions on that share? That's what I just wanted to show to people. We'll be playing with this more, and if we have the opportunity to talk to the user group about a big example of how it's helped us bring our goals together or raise awareness at an executive level of reports, I'll be happy to share that later. All right. So any other user shares, and especially from our incoming admin group that wants the opportunity to talk about something interesting they've done with Power BI. 10 minutes only.
Yeah, I've got something I can share.
There we go. I was looking right at you on the camera, Dustin.
And good job already busting out those goals. That's a super new feature. That's impressive. You guys are already using it and putting it to work.
Thanks. You can share whenever you need.
All right. So again, my name is Dustin Rodarmal from Heartland Business Systems. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. What I'm going to be sharing today is a little bit of some of the new shapes and some new visualizations that have recently came out. So there was a pretty extensive overhaul in the shapes area. So now you can. It used to be just real basic rectangle, circle, line type thing. So now you can do a lot more with the different shapes for your visualizations, as well as there's been some recent updates to this small multiples visual, which is kind of cool to be able to do some comparisons, and it makes, from a development perspective, really easy instead of having to replicate multiple visuals. Another thing that I've recently started working more with is using measures to capture data to then be able to put it out across multiple different pages of a report. So in this one, I've do kind of like a status card almost, where I can enter update, like last updated date, deployment date, and then some general contact information, as well as some like update notes down here, just to be able to kind of track what has been changed or what different updates have been made throughout the report or the document. One thing that I kind of liked how this one turned out was just following the data and then using a couple of different bookmarks to pull up different data. So these are actually buttons underlaid here, where as you click through, you can kind of create a new view per page where it'll pull up the different information, and kind of you can follow it through. And then if you were to create, say, like, let's just look at the bikes category, you can update where you're at throughout the report as you're clicking through.
It's very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you show? This is in the service. Oh, okay. What visual is it? Is it just a typical button that you can modify the shape? I haven't looked at this yet.
Yeah. So let my my model pull up. So what that little like diamond shape is literally just a shape in the background. So there's all these different shapes now. And then specifically what I have done here is I've layered multiple different components. So these are 2 cards with a button that is just like a no fill button. You can kind of see the outline there. And each of them have a button there. So it's multiple components. And then to layer it, I just have additional components on here to just the shapes to like lighten and darken the different pieces. So it's a series of layering. So as I continue to open up, I've got multiple layers of different visuals in here. So it's all done on a single page, but it's just bookmarks that are hiding and showing the different visuals.
Can you show us the contact card again?
What's that?
Can you click on the contact card again? Did you leverage that info button? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's again, it's another just layer of visuals. So I've got a box or a shape that covers everything to kind of give it that faded or kind of in front of it effect. And then this is just a matrix that I bring in different values. So then you can, if you come over here to the dev status, if I want to, and I'll make this a little bigger. Here's my different components. So if I want to change the last updated date, I can change that to whatever in here. So it's just a text value, but what's really nice is you can use something like this with measures in order to follow across multiple pages. So a lot of times I'll use, and I've seen people use like have a hidden page or something with dev notes or something where they're capturing information. What's kind of nice about doing it in here is since it's a measure, then you can bring it onto whatever page you want.
Okay, I see. Tina was kind of asking what button you hit, so you were answering that. Yep. Nice.
Sorry, I don't have the chat open right now. It's on my
No
other
problem.
screen.
That's why we're keeping an eye out for you.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. That's a good share. Any other questions or thoughts people got?
Yeah, I got one question regarding the small multiples. What is there a way to, I see how you have it broken down by each country.
Yeah.
Is there like a way to add an overall, like to show what the overall metrics are or charts? With it, I that was something we wanted to do with all of our divisions, and then kind of have one with our entire company. And I didn't know if that was possible.
Yeah, Greg, what I've done, I'm not quite sure if Dustin's tried it, is what I've done is I've found a functionality of adding in other category into everything. So you've got all your sort of creating a union with all your values from your dimension table. So this in particular, this example, all the countries, adding in another category called other or overall or global or whatever you want to call it, and then just create a measure that then calculates it across all the countries, and then add that global into your small multiples. And so you can have your global plus all your other ones. The only challenge I find with the small multiples, it doesn't really give it basically sorts everything in alphabetical order in terms of your countries, that you can't sort of do sort ordering on your countries or sort them by the top the highest value or something like that, which is their shortfall, I think, at the moment, unfortunately. Okay,
yeah, that's I like that. Thank you.
I'll find the link for it's. I'll find the link at, I know SQL BI, they they did a very similar one, and a number of people have done it, similar ones. I'll try and find the link while we on the call.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely some features that are less than convenient into it, but it's something that they keep rolling out new capabilities and new features to it. So I would assume, and if we get on the board and stuff and start requesting more information, I think that there's some more that improvements yet to happen too.
Yeah, I see that as with a lot of the visuals, it's like, oh yeah, it's really cool, but it's not going to work for me until they do about 7 or 8 more revisions. But I think it's a good start too. It's a good tool, and I think it will be a more powerful tool at some point too.
Yeah, depending upon what you're comparing to, this is kind of just an example of to proof of concept, but I've used it before where it's a little bit more comparison of individual like goals or something, where if you have like 4 on a screen, sometimes it's easier to do that as when you're comparing it, or it's a little bit more convenient. But it's definitely something that features keep rolling out, so hopefully that keeps getting better.
Nice. Thanks for the share, Dustin. Excellent.
Yeah,
Any other people that are willing to spend a few minutes with a user share, or inspired by Dustin and I to share something new going on with them? Otherwise, I'm going to jump it right into our main presenter for today. Rui Romano is an MVP, and it is delightful to have him come to our Green Bay Power BI user group to talk about Power BI monitoring. I'm going to let him take over from here. Welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you. Very glad to be here, so thank you for inviting me. Let me share my screen and let me know when it's visible.
It's coming through. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, quick introduction. My name is Rui Romano. I live and work in Portugal. I work at a company called DevScope, where I do mostly consulting. We also develop some amazing Power BI products. Actually, in the end, I will give away 5 licenses of our main product. It's Power BI Tiles to embed Power BI into PowerPoint and allow to refresh automatically. I'm a data architect, data engineer, working in BI my entire work career. Very passionate about Power BI. So sorry in advance if I show a little bit too enthusiasm into the talk. You can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I also have a blog. It's not updated too often, but I will try to improve that. Maybe this year. And you have my email, and everything that I'm going to show in the end, I will try to share the slides with you, but send me an email. I can also share the code, the PBI file, the scripts. So don't worry about understanding in detail what I'm going to show you, because it will be a little bit fast-paced, at least on the code, but I share the code with you. No worries on that. So the session today is called Power BI Monitoring 101. First, it's not a Power BI introduction, but I don't, from what I see during the media today, you all at least know what is Power BI. So I won't even introduce what is Power BI. I will talk about monitoring. And first, and I will spend quite a bit just explaining why you need to do it. Okay, and why this is important, because this is really, really important. And then I will demo a report that I built that I can share it in the end with you, that I built over this data to show you the potential and how to what type of insights you can extract from the monitoring data. And then I will also briefly, because we won't have, this is, I will need like 2 or 3 hours to show in detail, but I will show briefly how I do it. It will be fast-paced, but one more time, don't focus on the code, because I will show some code. Maybe you don't even know how to write code. You are not a programmer, but maybe you know a friend that is a programmer. So focus more on the potential, on the possibility, and why this is important, and why you need to do it in your company if you are not already doing it. So If you cannot answer these questions, so for example, what's the most active user in your organization? And why this is important? Because this is very important, because if you want to release a new feature, if you want to activate a new feature in Power BI has new features every month. If you want to do some major change, the most active users are the ones that you need to talk to. Those are the ones that will be more impacted by your change. So it's very important for you as a Power BI admin, a Power BI developer, to know who are the most active users of your reports, of your Power BI tenant. Another very important question that is important to answer is how many distinct users you have and how many users you have. And this is very, very, very important if you have a premium capacity, because the premium capacity on Gen 2, what will stress the most your premium capacity, it will be the amount of users that you have in a single hour, the amount of parallel users that you have. So it's very important to know exactly how many users do you have. And this is also very important for licensing, because you can say, and I've seen this situation a lot of times in customers. I have 1,000 users, but then, okay, you have total, in 1 year, you have 1,000 users. But if you look at the distinct count of users per month, it will be 200 or 100. And why do they have 1,000 distinct users in the year? They have it because if you think on a school, maybe a school will have, per semester, they will have the number of licenses that they will need for per semester is not 1,000. It might be 100 or 200. So this is very important to know exactly the amount of distinct users to know the amount of licenses that you need also as well. So, and if you cannot answer this, if you are just guessing, you need to stop doing it, because this can translate into money. So if you think on licensing, if you don't know the exact number of this, maybe you are making the wrong licensing decisions. Another question is, how is content being shared? So maybe you designed a guideline to in your company into how Power BI reports are being shared with the other users. Are they shared by apps? They are being shared by workspaces? And you can monitor this, and you can know exactly how your users, and the developers that you might not have control, how are they sharing content? How are they publishing content through your Power BI tenant? Another question is, do people or users, do they use personal workspaces? Is there a report that is used by the CEO or is being used by very important users in the company that exist in personal workspaces? Does that happen? That is another thing, another question that is very important to know, especially when we are talking about the governance. So you can also use the monitoring data to see how the developers are sharing, how the developers are publishing the content, where the reports exist, and which reports is used by every day by everyone, which is probably the most important reports in your company. And if I ask a developer what's the most important report, they will tell it's the report that gave them more work, but that's not exactly true. So you can have multiple reports. Maybe the most used report in your company is a report that lives in a personal workspace. And if that person leaves the company, that report will be broken. It won't get lost, don't worry about it. You can recover this, but it will be broken and it will be a problem. And you will be in stress trying to get that report and publish in a workspace as it should be. Where do your users come from? Do they come from mobile? Do they come from the browser? Are they using Excel? Who are the users that are using Excel to analyze data sets? And this question, browser and mobile, is really important because this can also translate into money. Why? Because when you are developing a report, you have this decision if you should do the mobile view of the report. And maybe you are asking your developers or consultants to, every time they build a report, to build a mobile view of the report. And maybe no one is using mobile. So why are you spending money and time doing it? So it's also very, very important to know where are they coming from and which browser, for example. I will give you an example in a customer where they were always complaining that Power BI was slow. And when I accessed the tenant, it was quick. And they were always complaining it was slow. And then I figured it out. I don't know if that's still the case because I don't use Firefox. But 2 years ago, this was more or less 2 years ago, a lot of users in that company, they all used Firefox. I'm asking me why. They like Firefox. It's a good browser, and I also don't know why, but Firefox made Power BI slow. I don't know if that's still the case, but at that time, Power BI, and I can tell you, I opened a Power BI report in Chrome, I opened a Power BI report in Firefox, and the Firefox version was really slow. It was painfully slow. I don't know why, maybe it was some extension, I don't know, but even on my laptop, that happened. So it's also important to know which browser, because if you want to take the Power BI deployments into the next level, when you go to test the Power BI report, you need to test the Power BI reports in the browser that your users use the most, not the browser that you think it's important for you. Because if you are a BI developer, the users, and you need to test, and you need to be in the, if you want to test as the experience as the end user, you should do it as they do. So this is also very important to know the browser that they use. Another thing is data sources. So Power BI connects to a collection of data sources. You can use databases, you can use OneDrive, you can use file system. It's also important as an admin to know which data sources exist or your data sets connect to. And and all the data sets that exist in your tenant, not just the ones that you control, not just the ones that you have access. If you are an admin, you actually don't get access to every workspace unless you go there and add yourself. So it's important to know and to monitor which data sources are you accessing. Another story that I can tell you here is I have a customer that has this monitor solution, and they designed a guideline that, or they don't allow any Power BI developer or user to build a Power BI data set that connects to local files in the file system. So they have this guideline, or every file, if you can build your own Power BI file report, but the data, the files, we connect to an Excel file, but the Excel file needs to be on OneDrive. And they designed this guideline. They write a document in how to migrate and how you shall do the Power BI connected to OneDrive, how to convert a Power BI connected to the file system to OneDrive. So they designed this guideline, and then using monitoring, they just filter all the data sources with files, with C, with data sources of files starting with C, D, E, all the letters of a file system. And every time a data set shows up in there, they know who is the creator of that data set. They go to the creator, to the user, and they tell them, hey, you cannot use the local file system. You need to use OneDrive. Here's the guideline. Here's how you can do it. And then they give it like 5 days or so to the developer to do the change. And when the developer does a change, it stops showing on the report. So this is the type of thing that you can do with data source data. Then data sets refreshing. So monitoring the data sets refreshes that happen every time. The average time a refresh take, if the refresh is getting slower and slower, this is also something that is very important. It's on last, but it's also very important. It's monitor also the no usage. And why this is important? This is very important because if you have a report it's very complex and no one used that report for a year, maybe it's time to deprecate that report, because if that report is very complex, you will need to dedicate time to support that data set and reports. And if you are making some change into a database, you will need to spend time refactoring that data set that no one is using. So if no one is using, just deprecate that report. So it's also very important to monitor what is not being used for a specific time frame. And for last, licensing. So and I see this all the time as well. You buy 200 licenses, and then you see you collected the monitoring data, and then you go and filter all the Power BI users with a license with no activity, and then for those 100, maybe only 20 are using Power BI, and you are spending more money, more licensing than you need. So it's also very important to monitor the users and the licenses that each user has, and the activity of the user, if they are actually using Power BI, if they are actually taking advantage of having that license. Because maybe you bought 100 licenses, and then you assign those 100 licenses, and you have 20 more that wants a license, and you are not giving them because those you already spent all the licenses that you have. And maybe from those 100 licenses, 20 or 50 are not even using Power BI for 3 months. And you can just, because a Power BI license, and I don't know if you know this, a Power BI license is not binded to the user. It's just a seat. Today I'm seated I have a license. Tomorrow I might not have the license. And you can even have scripts getting monitoring data and smartly assigned licenses. I work with a school that does that. They have 500 teachers, but active in a single month, they don't have more than 100. So they have a script. They look into the user start activity, to the teacher activity, and they assign the license if the teacher is active in the month. If the teacher is not active, they assign to the other. So we are talking about going from 500 licenses to 100. It's a lot of money. Okay, so this is just to give you why you need to do it. Because if you don't answer those questions, if you cannot answer those questions, I can tell you, you are driving blind, and there is a big reality check ahead of you. Okay,
there's one use case mentioned too that I didn't see on your list, and that was mentioned in the chat, is detecting of exporting, so that you can keep an eye on where your data is being taken in the system.
I didn't. Thank you.
Yep.
I didn't talk about that, but it's in here. It's a published web. Just monitoring if someone is using published web, and who is the person that is using published web, and maybe they are not allowed to. Fortunately, currently that is disabled by default, but in the past it wasn't. In the past it was by default, it was open, and I've seen this also many times of companies realizing the IT didn't know even that they have Power BI. They have another BI system, and then they realized that hundreds of users, they were using personal workspaces and using published web to share content between each other. That is very dangerous. So yes, so you can monitor. You will actually get every time you do an activity in Power BI, every time you view a report, every time you export, every time you use the API, that will generate an audit log, and that's the data that we are going to collect and analyze. So, and it's very important to do the BI of the BI. So if you are using Power BI, this is a BI platform. It's also important to look into the data of that BI platform. This is something that I've done since I started working 15 years ago. At the time, we didn't have Power BI, of course, but we had reporting services, analysis services, and I always try to collect this data and build reports over this data, because and sometimes this is the difference of a very successful project and a failure. For example, one of the things that we can get through this data is, and I talked about that, is are users using mobile experience? If they are not using mobile, then we know that, and we can react to that. So we can actually make them aware that they can use mobile, and it's important. So we can do some workshops. So we can also look at the monitoring data to do in a strategic way to try to promote features that we think it's important to our users and they don't know about it. Because and maybe you need to somehow do more trainings. You need to send them do a local company user group to share some user stories between them. I don't know. So, but you know about that. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So first, and before showing you what a custom solution, let's talk about what's available out of the box. And this is important also for you to know, because maybe you don't have the authority or the permissions to collect the monitoring data as an admin. So, and if you don't have that, this is the thing that at least you should do that. So if you go to a workspace, you have this option on the workspace on the report. When you open the report, that is called Open Usage Metrics, and this will give you this report where you can get all the report views. You can even get some data that I don't have in my solution. That is the page level data. So the page views, the time to open a page. This is more telemetry data that I will love to have that data, but unfortunately it's not available on the API. And on this solution, on the out-of-the-box solution, it's available. So it's very good for that. What is bad is, first, you only have 7 days of data. And second, it's at the workspace level. So if you want to get a tenant overview, you cannot with this. So this is workspace. You need to workspace by workspace, click on the Open Usage Metrics, refresh the data set, and you will have the report. But maybe you are only in charge of one workspace, and this is enough for you. And 7 days is enough for you to know the usage strength. So this is out of the box. You don't need to have any extra permissions, any admin permissions on the tenant or the Azure. So you can just use it. The second, and actually this one, I actually don't like it very much. I hope that they improve this. It's at the tenant level. So you have all the data from the tenant. There is no, it will give you some statistics. So it will give you the number of dashboards, the number of reports, the number of data sets, the number of users, but you don't have any way to interact with it. So it's very limited. And I actually seen data in here, like number of users different than the ones that I have. And I know that mine are correct because I checked. But you have it. So on admin, if you are an admin, a Power BI admin, if you go to the admin portal, you can just click on user metrics and you have a collection of tiles that will give you some statistics over your tenants. And now I will show you my solution. So this is a Power BI report. And before showing the architecture and how to do it, I will just demo the report. So this is the first page. It's the activity report view. So in here, I have a trend line of my usage. I'm using a very neat feature. It's called anomaly detection. So I have the logs by day, and I have some anomalies. So for example, in here, I'm seeing I had 1,377 logs, but the expected value for the logs was for 401. And I can even click here and see a possible explanation. So there is a possible explanation that the amount of these logs was caused by this user. And this is completely out of the box in Power BI. This is a very nice feature. The only thing that you need to do is you need to have a line chart, and you use this option over here, analytics, and you set up an anomaly detection. So I have just here a trend. Then this is one of the most, these two, the distinct users and the distinct users per day, are two very important measures and KPIs. So the first one, distinct users. So since November last year until today, in my tenant, this is actually the DevScope Power BI tenant, we have 114 distinct users accessing the tenant. Of course, if I reduce the slicer, this will change. But only 19 users access it every day. So on a single day, I never add, the average usage is 19 users. So if I'm talking about licensing, maybe I don't need 100 licenses. I need 20 licenses or 25 licenses, because the average of usage per day is not greater than 90. And I can even see that per hour. And the per hour is very important if I'm buying premium and I'm deciding the amount of vCores that I need. So I actually know that in my tenants, I don't have the average user per hour, the distinct users per hour, the average, let's say at the peak hours from 9 to 11, is not, the average is 6, 6, 8. And the maximum, so the line in here is the maximum, is 15. So at 9 o'clock, at 9 a.m., my average distinct users is 6. And since November last year until today, the maximum was 15. I never have at 9 a.m. more than 15 users actively using my tenant. And this is very, very important if you are deciding for premium, if you have an Azure analysis services behind the scenes, because this will tell you that you don't have more than 6 users in average accessing your Power BI reports. This chart over here is also very nice, because this can tell you can see the trend. So you can see from November last year until today, on this line over here, I can see the distinct users. So in November, I had 64 distinct users. In March, I have 79 distinct users, and I can see the trend. So I can see that the Power BI adoption is rising in my company. So I can see that from February to April, we increase the amount of distinct users, and then we decrease it. And another thing that I can do that is also very nice is I can click on authoring. And authoring, now I'm filtering all the events related to authoring. And what is an author? Create a report, edit a report, delete a report. It's someone that is creating content. And I can see that the amount of authoring is decreasing, so the activity trend is lowering. And this is also important, because if I'm governing a Power BI tenant, it's important, and I'm doing a lot of workshops with my users, teaching them how to create reports. If I want to have a self-service strategy in my company, it's very important to monitor the authoring, if the authoring is growing or if it's not growing. And if it's not growing, then I can do something about it. So, and this is the difference of perception versus reality, because I might be doing the workshops and people are saying you are the best, everything. So I really love Power BI, and then I look at the data, and no one is creating anything in the entire tenant. So and I can react to it. So I basically grouped the operations into operation groups. So another thing, export operations. So who is doing exports? And what type of exports are they doing? And I can see, like, okay, there is a lot of exports from this Power BI governance. That is the service principle that I use to collect the data. And I can actually also, for example, let's say, imagine a situation where a company will leave the company, or just left the company. I might want to see what type of exports that person has done. So I can click, let's say, on João here, and I can see that he actually downloaded reports, exported data flows, exported artifacts. It's just the export data, the time where he has done the exports. I can even see, okay, I want to see what type of exports have you done here, and I can even drill through to another report that will tell me exactly which report, which workspace, which data set, from which browser, from the IP address that he used to do that export. So you can have all this detail. You can go from top down into this data. This is actually the data that you get from the audit log. So you'll get a table like this with all these columns. So what I've done was actually aggregate this data, do a star schema with the activity and the catalog data. Now,
could you say a little bit about the operation group? Did you manually say the different kinds of activities belong into these special operation groups?
Exactly. So in Power Query, I just group them. So I know that, for example, data view operations, this in here is actually the operation that you get from the logs. Oh, sorry. The view report and analyzed by external application and view dashboard, and I group that as a data view, but that's manually on the Power Query. So if there is a new operation, it will probably show up in this other category, and I can see which are. So I have a lot of other categories, but these are the main ones for me. So another very important is sharing. So who is sharing content between each other? Creating sharing reports, creating apps, publishing apps. You can also see that here. Mm-hmm. Now, going down here, so this is just showing by user, workspace, app, and dataset, and in here you can do a lot of very interesting stuff. So I can imagine I published this app. This is an app that we have so we are a consulting shop, so we have time reports, and it's important for me if I have this application time reports. I can in Power BI application. I can filter the app and I can see which users are using the app and from where. For example, myself, I use a lot of mobile, but a lot of my colleagues, they don't use mobile. So this is not really important to design a mobile experience for this time reports application. Or I should make them aware. I should tell them, hey, you have this mobile experience. You don't need to access through the browser every time. So maybe, or I can just decide, because this might be a Power BI report that is managed by a consultant, I might just decide, hey, don't spend time designing a mobile view because no one is using it. For example, this one over here, this one is very important, mobile. The main reason is that our CEO, it uses mobile, so we need to have a mobile experience for him. So you can even have this VIP persons. You can group the users as a very important persons that you need to monitor their experience and to know if they are accessing Power BI. And if they are not accessing Power BI, maybe they are using another report or a manual report that they shouldn't. So you can click on the app. So this is Power BI. So you click, it will flow the filters to all the others. So I can do the other way. I can click the user and I can see the activity of that user through time. I can see which workspaces are they accessing, which apps, which data sets. For example, when you click on the workspace here, now this is not data, app. So I can see that, for example, I have a lot of users accessing my workspace. They are not accessing through apps. And this might also be a problem because I could be in my governance strategy on Power BI. I might want all the users to connect through apps and not through workspaces. So this is also important to monitor. And also Excel. So I can click on MS Lab and see which data sets are using Excel. I can even go here to the filters and go to the user agent group, and let's see who is using Excel. So these are the users that are using Excel. I can click on the user and I can see which data sets. So on the activity, I'm pretty sure that I missed something here, but this is what you get. So it's just going and delving into the activity. Oh, I was almost forget. I love this dashboard, this chart over here. So this is a scatter chart that will show you the amount of district user on the X and the amount of logs on the Y. And you can see, so this is correlating the two measures, and you can see, for example, if there is a correlation of the amount of logs between the amount of distinct users. So of course, this one view reports, I have 105 distinct users, and it's the operation with more logs. Let's just exclude this one, and I can find some interesting stuff in here. So I have an operation with a lot of logs, 4,000, with only one distinct user, and this is normal because this is probably, I can even answer that. The user is a service principal that is being used to export the data. It's actually the service principal that I use. So this correlating and the activity with the amount of logs and the amount of users is something that you can get some very useful insights.
Very cool. You're getting a lot of thumbs up in the chat.
Thank you. Now, report activity. Report activity is also very important. Now, in here, we are seeing the entire operations available in Power BI. So everything, some of them are not actually visible, but so in here you have all the operations. So if I wanted to see publish to web, I can see who is doing publish to web. Now, the second page, it's also an activity, but it's more focus on reports, views of the report. So this is to see, for example, what is the most active report, and if the trend of the report is getting, so if that report is getting more usage over the time. So if I click on here, you can actually see that is a positive trend. And in here as well, for example, this one, it's a negative trend. So it's lowering. So this is just focusing on the reports. And actually, the report is the most important asset in Power BI. So that's why I made this page. It's just, okay, in the entire tenant and the report views, not because you can do a lot of other things than report views. In our tenant, mobile is not that big deal. So, so this is only focused on reports. So, and this is the activity. Then we go to the catalog. So, and I actually split this into kind of two models. So one thing is activity, another thing is the catalog. What exists inside your company, even if it's not used. So activity just has reports that are being used. Catalog is everything. So in my tenant, I have 360 workspaces. I still have 34 workspaces on the V1 that I should, no, this one. I have 89 workspaces that are still on V1 version. So I need to convert them because they will be deprecated. So I have 193 workspaces with content, and I have 34 personal workspaces with content. So I have more than 34 personal workspaces because I have 100 users, but with Power BI content, with a dashboard, a report, a data set, I have 34 workspaces. And I can click on a workspace. I can see each workspace, the amount of reports, data sets, and dashboards. I can see, and this is something new. The API wasn't released yet on the documentation, but I was allowed to share that with you. The endpoint is already public. You can get as an admin the apps. So up until now, the only way to list all the apps that are published in your company, you require to have the only way possible was using have a user with that is a member on every workspace, and then you can use the API or collect that data through the activity. Right now, you can actually get as an admin all the apps that got published into the company. So at Devscope, we have 68 apps published. A simple tree view, just seeing by workspace to the report. You can see who is the most active creator, Power BI creator in the company. So just catalog data, nothing too fancy here. You can also I have also a drill through over here that you filter a workspace, and it will get you all the catalog for that workspace, data sets, all the data from those data sets, what type of data sets, the workspace, the dates of the modification of the workspaces. So in here, just what do exist in the company. Another thing that this is also something new. You can also get through the API data about the columns and the tables and the measures and the types of the columns and the descriptions of the columns. And why this is important? This is very important because you can kind of build a self-documentation with this. So you can have, you will get from all the data sets, you will get all the tables that exist in the data set and all the columns and all the types. And you can, if you have a description, so if you are using, so I don't know if you know this, but if you go to a column and you select, no, it's not here, it's in here. Let's say you can write a description. So you can write some documentation like authoring. So authoring shows the amount of authoring log. It documents the measure. So you write the description of the measure. If you write this will show up in the metadata of the measure. So you can build a report to your end users like a wiki where they can know if, for example, I want to search all the measures that have a year to date. And this will filter all the measures that somehow have a year to date in there. In the DAX, you can even see the DAX statement of that measure. So you can look at this more like a self-documentation of your data models. And we do this like a wiki. So we have a Power BI report that has all the data sets and all the measures inside the Power BI tenant. And we just give that report to the end users and they can search through a measure. So they can even, let's say, like, okay, which sales measures or sales, what do exist in my models around sales? So this might be also very useful. Even if I try all the time to don't write the documentation, but sometimes customers force me to do it, but I'm trying. You can even get all the column data types. So what type of strings you have, what types of ints. So this can also give you some insights into if the model was well built. So if you have a model with everything is a string and that Power BI data set is getting slower, maybe that's a reason. You can also use this to that end. Now, data sets. So data sets also a very, very important asset. And on data sets and data sources, you can also get through the monitoring and the APIs. In this case, it's the admin APIs. You can get all the data sets and all the data sources that those data sets connect to. And in our case, we have a lot of data sets connecting to files. I can click on the files. I can see which files. Are they coming from the local file system? Yes, they are coming from the local file system. So I can somehow, if I don't want them to do this, I can react and talk to Antonio and say, hey, Antonio, you shouldn't connect Power BI to local files. So you should put the files on OneDrive because the OneDrive will show as a SharePoint. And SQL Server. So SQL Server, these are all the servers that my data sets connect to. And this is also very important because I might want to see if someone is connecting to who is building data sets connecting to the production database or my transactional database. And I don't want them to do it because, guys, one of the big advantages of Power BI and the self-service versus users and business users building analysis with Excel is that you can get this data. On Excel, if they build an analysis, if they export data from the system and they build their own Excel application with those fancy pivot tables and very complex stuff, you don't have a way to audit that. So if you somehow train them to use Power BI and they publish, they will do some very creative stuff, I'm sure, but at least it will be audited. At least you will know that Power BI data set that was created by a business user or power user which data sources it connects. And if that Power BI dataset is connecting to the ACP production database and you don't want them to, you will know, and you can react. You can go after it and you can try to understand why you have done it and try to say, okay, you have this data warehouse that you can use with the same level of data and train them to do it. So just looking into data sets, data sources is also something that is very important. I can even come here and search what data sources have CRM in the connection. So I can see, okay, I have this database CRM over here. So, and I can know, I can very easily know which data sets and from which workspaces have data sets connecting to a CRM data source. And refreshes. So, and something that unfortunately you cannot get this today through the admin API. So you need to literally loop all the workspaces and all the data sets and call an API called a refresh history. But this is gold data. So this is something that, as a Power BI developer or a Power BI admin, it's very, very important data to look at. So I can, let's say, I can click on this Power BI dataset and I can see all the refreshes and the amount of time, the average duration for each refresh. So I can see that this Power BI activity monitor is taking 3,000 seconds to refresh. And it has some these normal peaks. So sometimes it's 3,000 seconds, other times it's 1,000 seconds. So this is something that is also very important to know. I can even look at which data sets failed, what's the error of that fail. Something that I also like to do, also I calculated a calculated column with the standard deviation for each refresh. So I can see, okay, let me just look into data sets with a standard deviation greater than 800. So it means that this is they have a pretty normal refresh rate. And let's click on this one, and you can see that that is true. So sometimes it's 1,800 seconds, other times it's 4,000. So this is something that we should be aware. And this is very easy. So you can just calculate the standard deviation. And so let's say, let's do the other way around. So let's see data set refreshes with a, with the low standard deviation. So they have refresh. I have very few. Increase this a little bit. Oh. Okay. If I filter this one, so the amount, the refresh time is very similar. So we don't have those gaps, those big gaps between. You have a gap like more 100 or less 100. It's not like this one that is more 3,000 and less 3,000. So in here, this is very normal. So, and this might be something, a situation in the data source or something else. So refresh and just looking into the data set refresh data is also something that can give you a lot of insights over your data sets. Then users. So users and permissions. So listing all the workspaces and see which users are added to the workspace, what type of user it is, if it is a user, if it's an application, a service principal, if it is a security group. And just looking at this, I can see that this tenant is not a good tenant because this is mostly a developer tenant, but this is not normal. So almost all my workspaces have admins. This is not normal. So normally we have more viewers than admins. So this is also something that is very important to monitor as an audit, because you can, for auditing purposes, because you can come here, you can export the list of all the workspaces and all the users that exist in each workspace. Like this, let me try to expand. So you can actually see all the users that are added in here. And last, licensing. So and this is actually not only using Power BI data, I also need to connect to the Graph API to get this data. So I connect to the Graph API to get the display name of the users and also the licenses that each user has. And then I have the activity. So I know if that user has any activity or not. So I can have a slicer in here that I filter Power BI users with no activity and with a license. And I can say that in my company, since November, I have 45 licenses of 45 users that they don't even log into Power BI. So I might react to this and, okay, I will give those licenses to someone else that is asking for those licenses. Okay, nice. You can cross this data together. And this is something that is very useful when you are just governing your licensing or renewing your licensing. You were going to ask a question?
I wanted to say we got about half an hour, getting to the half-hour left point. I want to make certain that, are you going to give a brief overview of how you collected this? And there was a couple questions that are more probably related to that. How, like, how long did it take? And are you keeping all that log? How are you keeping all that log activity? What kind of database?
I will talk that. I will speak about that just in a minute.
Sounds good.
So. Also, so this is actually the last report, no activity. So no activity is really, really important. So no activity will give you, for example, all the workspaces with no activity in more than 200 days. So this workspace over here, it has some reports that no one uses for 200 days. I can even increase the slicer. Let's see, no activity in more than 186 days. So operations with no activity, let's increase this a little bit. So no one does an export tile in more than 162 days. So just looking at also at the no activity is also sometimes something that you should be aware of, because you might be supporting reports and workspaces that you don't need to. Or you should just remove the access and try to deprecate those reports because no one is using. And you can see that through the operations. You can also see that through the user. So this user, it doesn't use Power BI for 200 days. The last log was actually in November last year. So this is a report. So this is what you get from the activity and the catalog data. Now I will show you how to build this. So let's start with the architecture. So this is the simplest architecture or the simplest thing that you can do. This is what I will share with you if you ask me. So drop me an email. I share the scripts and I will share the reports. This is a collection of PowerShell scripts. So the reason why I built this with PowerShell and not Python or not C# or not anything else, it's because I'm most comfortable with Python, with PowerShell. But you can do this with whatever language or whatever tool that just can call that can call an API. So the solution is collection of PowerShell scripts, and I'm getting data from the Power BI REST API. I'm getting data using the metadata, the admin APIs, using a new API that got released, that was released in January. It's async, so you can. Before this, there was another admin API, but it took, just to give you an example, to collect a 5,000 workspace tenant, it took like 1 hour. This new API, you can get the exact same data in less than 10 minutes. So it's amazing. So the async APIs, metadata APIs are really good. And also the activity logs API. One thing that you need to be aware is if you are not collecting this data today, you are losing data because you can only go back 30 days. Okay, so if you can, even if you don't.
Rui, quick one on that 30 days one is, if you've got the 30 days on the REST API, can you sort of do an extract from the activity log to try and get sort of 90 days or the other 60 days that you've lost out on, just to start with, before you then start this process moving forward?
I'm not sure if I understood the question, but on the API, they will only give you 30 days. What you can do is you
So what
can
I'm saying,
just start
you go-
collecting and storing. I don't know if that's the.
So what I was thinking is if you go on to the actual activity log into the Microsoft Admin Center and extract the activity data and sort of output it to CSVs, so you can get 90 days worth, and then
Oh.
you moving forward from here.
So you are saying, yeah, I think you are right. I'm actually not sure on that, but if you go through the Office 365 admin portal, you can extract more than 30 days. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes,
but
yes,
only
and it's exactly the same data. So yes, you can use those the Office 365 admin to extract that activity data. You will get not only from Power BI, you will also get from other Office 365 services, but you can filter the Power BI log type, and it's exactly the same data. It will have, it's also a JSON file. You can extract and you can store it and use it and then today use the. I would recommend to use the Power BI API for that, not the Office 365, because it's even easier to collect, so you don't need a service principal. You don't need to authorize that service principal to use the Office 365 admin audit logs. Through the API, you just need to have a service principal that is authorized to connect to the admin API.
I will say,
you can do it.
my experience in this area is that related to you will need to extract the logs and get them out somewhere, because Microsoft only keeps 30 up to maybe 90 days for typical licensing needs. If you paid them a ton of money and you're on the super government program, then they may keep it longer. But yeah, an essential component of this will be to get those logs out regularly and store them somewhere else.
Yeah, but the data that is on Office 365 is the same. So if you somehow add an Office 365 admin and you can get more than 30 days, then yes, you will have, I think the maximum is 90 days.
Cool.
But the point in here is if you are not collecting this data, you are losing the data. So even if you can go 90 days back, tomorrow you will lose the today minus 90 days before. So just collect this data, because you have gold in this data. If you have a big Power BI tenant and you are not collecting this data, you are losing a big opportunity, because in the future, when you might want to do a big decision around Power BI, this data will be very, very important. So I have a PowerShell script and connecting to these two APIs. I also have another PowerShell script that I call fetch graph that will get the user's data and also the licenses for each user. And if you don't want to use, and this is optional. So if you don't care about licensing, then you don't need to run this script. If you don't care about catalog, you only need to run the activity script. So they are all optional. So if you are only interested in the activity, then this is the only one that you need to run. So the PowerShell scripts store data in the local folder, and then my Power BI report connects to this local folder to get the data and to build the report that I just shown. And each script, it has a configuration file that every time it runs, it will store the date of the run, and tomorrow it will resume from yesterday date. So it's not every time you run the fetch activity script, it's not going to collect 30 days. It will just collect the activity log since the last time it ran. Okay, it has that logic there. But so this is the simplest architecture that I can find. This is the simplest way for me to share something with you, that you just need to create a service principal. I will show how to create a service principal in a minute, and it will run and you can just start collecting the data. But if you ask me, is this a recommended architecture to do something like this? No. So what I do normally is I have an Azure function. You also have another option that is an amazing blog series from Just that shows how to do this with Azure Data Factory. I still prefer the Azure function because it gives me more flexibility. That's personal preference. Azure Data Factory, maybe if you don't have any programming skills, it will be better for you. But I will build something in Azure completely. So nothing is running locally in a computer and storing in the file system. So I have an Azure function that collects from the same APIs, but instead of storing the data in the local folder, I will store the data in a data lake or a blob storage. And Power BI will connect to that blob storage. That is something that I've done, and I will also explain why this Power BI report works in both ways. So I use a technique that I called file proxy, where in the Power Query, I have a parameter that I say, okay, data is coming from the file system. If it's coming from the file system, it will use the folder.files Power Query connector. If it's data, if I want to connect to a data lake, then I change that parameter and it will connect to a data lake. Because a file is always a file. So the file is not different if it's on the data lake or if it's on the file system. So I can have the same Power BI report, the same Power BI implementation connecting to the data lake or the file system. So I don't want to manage two developments. But this is my recommendation. So if you want to build something like this, and if you want to build it a more resilient way, I would do it with an Azure architecture, something that can be run in the cloud. It will have self-monitoring, so it will scale the data, so you don't need to worry about disk space. So it will just store it in the data lake, and in the end, Power BI will connect to it.
Rui, just quick on this. Have you had much experience of connecting, instead of doing you've got the first version, which was the sort of simple version, and then you've obviously got the Azure version, but we don't use Azure. We've only got an on-prem SQL Server. So I'm assuming we could then have to use your first version, but then have a series of SSIS packages to bring in the CSV files into SQL Server and then put it into
that's you can do that. So you can use this version, collect the file. This will store data in the. I will show you the files. So in a collection of folders actually let me show you. So this is the file. So this is the root folder, and for the activity, I have a file for each year, each month, and then the files per day. So you can build a SSIS package that will come here and take these files and dump it into a SQL database. That's one option. Another thing that you can do is you can actually change the scripts to write directly to the table if you want.
Okay, so those could write directly to a SQL table then, the PowerShell scripts.
You can do that. So the PowerShell script doesn't do that, but it's perfectly possible. I even have a PowerShell module that is available open source. It's called SQL Helper. It's very easy to do. So you just need to do a book copy into a table that will get all the data from that is in memory on the script and write it. But maybe it's better to keep it as it is, because you will have a file version of the activity in this case, or the catalog data, and then you just need to sync this. So this is a standard JSON file. So let me show you one example. So this is the data that you get from the activity log. So you just need to write the package that writes this data to a table. So there is no. Okay, but cool. If you want, you can also change the scripts. Okay, so in here is the list of all the APIs that I'm using. So the admin APIs, the admin scan APIs. So this is the actual new APIs that I was talking about. They are really, really cool. They are async because the API is not call and get the data. So you need to actually say, okay, get me all the workspaces that was modified since the last time I collected. So you get that order, and then you start. So Power BI will do that behind the scenes in an async way. That's why they are called async APIs. And in the end, you just need to you have another API with a scan ID that Power BI will return to just get the data. So the PowerShell script, what it does is it calls, okay, get me all the workspaces with modifications since the last time. And then for each workspace, it's calling an API that will, okay, get me the data for this collection of 100 workspaces. And then it's waiting for the scan to go to the end. And in the end, just get the data and store it. It's a little bit more complex than the old one, but it's way, way, way faster. One of the reasons that is way faster is you don't need to scan all the tenants every time. So you need to scan it once, and then you will only scan it, the workspaces with modifications. Okay, that's why you can literally scan 5,000 workspaces or more in minutes. Then the Power BI metadata, I still use an old admin API from the users because I actually don't get the permissions on the async API, so I need to use the Power BI metadata API, and I also use the refresh history because there is no admin API to get the refresh history, unfortunately. Then the activity logs is using the activity events. So this page over here that I'm opening is the documentation. You can see all the APIs that exist on admin level. So this is the APIs that I'm using. The activity events, you can even try it online to see what type of data it returns. So this is the get operation that you need to call, and it even show you the payload that it returns. So all the APIs that I call are in here, and I also have the graph API to get the users and the licenses that exist in your tenant. Now, something that is important to talk before going into the how to create a service principal. This is actually maybe the most complicated part on the whole process. So to call these APIs, you need to authenticate with those APIs. So the authentication is made through OAuth. I'm not an expert in OAuth. What I can tell you is that OAuth is the dance between an application and a service that you will kind of, okay, I'm the application, you need to authenticate, someone authenticates, go back to the application, then go back to the service, to the identity provider, and in the end, you will get a token. And that token is the authentication string that you will use to call the resource API. And you have three ways to authenticate with the APIs. The first one, and my recommendation, using the client credential flow, where you need to create a service principal. I will show you how to do it. It's not a big deal. And you need to authorize that service principal to call the admin APIs as a read-only. And if you want to use those graph and licensing data, you also need to add permissions to the service principal to read the graph API. As an alternative, you can use an account. So it's not a service principal, it's an actual account. And that account needs to be a Power BI admin account. I don't recommend this too, because if you somehow compromise the admin account, it's a Power BI admin account. So the person that, if that password gets compromised, for example, if you put the password on the script and someone has access to the script, he can actually log in into your Power BI tenant as an admin. With the service principal, that's not the case. So you cannot use a service principal to log into Power BI as an admin. You can use the service principal to call the APIs as a read-only, not admin, so you cannot change anything. So I would highly recommend to use the service principal to authenticate. And what is this service principal, and how can you create one? So this is our 7 steps to do it, and the optional one for the Graph API. So you need to go to your Azure Active Directory. You need to select an option called App Registration. So if you go to, let me show you. So if you go to your Active Directory, you have this option over here, App Registrations. So you click here, you click New, you give it a name, and you select Register. You don't need to change anything else. And you need to grab this application ID. You need also to grab this tenant ID. And you need to generate a secret. You go here, new client secret, and this will generate the password for you. And you need to be aware that you need to copy this secret you need to store it. So you need to store the application ID, the tenant ID, and the secret. So if you don't store it now, after you refresh, this is no longer visible. And the service principal is created. So now to use that service principal because then on my scripts, if you go to this config file, there will be a config file that will give you, and in here you need to put the application ID, the application secret, and the tenant ID. But you are not ready to go yet because you just created a service principal. You didn't authorize that service principal to connect to your Power BI tenant. So you need to have a friend that is a Power BI admin. You need to go to the admin portal. And actually, you need to do another thing. So you create a service principal. You need to also create a security group. And it will explain why you need to create a security group, but you need to come here to the Azure Active Directory. You will create a security group. Let's call it the Power BI API admin group, something like that. And you need to put in the members, you need to add that service principal that we just created. I'm not remembering the name, but the service principal that you created will show up in here. So something like this. In this case, the Power BI Monitor service principal, you add it to the group. And after that, you go to the Power BI admin portal. You go to the tenant settings. And in here, there is a setting called allow service principals to use Power BI admin APIs. And you need to add the security group over here. The reason why you need to create a security group is that you cannot add a service principal directly. The service principal needs to be in the security group. What I normally do is I create a Power BI admin service principal security group. It's like an Azure Active Directory group. And every time I want a service principal to connect to my Power BI tenant as an admin to get this admin data, I just add a service principal to the security group and I'm set. So, and after that, you have everything you need to call the API and use the scripts that I'm going to provide you. Optionally, if you want to get the licenses, then you need to do an extra step. You need to go to this you need to go to the service principal that you just created, and you need to go to API permissions, and you need to add a permission and Microsoft Graph, an application permission, and add permission to the service principal to list and get the users, to read all the users as an admin. So you need to add the permissions. It's a user read all and also organization read all because of the licenses. So you need to add these two permissions. And after you add it, you need to grant admin consent because you need to grant this application to basically read all the user data from your tenant. And yes, this application will read all the users, so it will have the rights to list all the users that exist in your tenant and all the licenses that each user has. So it might be a problem to get this approved. If you are a BI guy or the BI admin, you need to basically have the permission to list all the users. But this is the only way that you get to be able to cross activity data with the licenses. So it might be a good compromise. But one more time, it's optional. And you basically we have this first milestone. So we have everything that we need from the IT and BI admin support to get this data. So after that, you can just go to the scripts. You have that configuration file that I showed you. You put the application ID, the secret, and the tenant. You run the script, and this will start collecting this data. And this is the most important one, the activity, because you are losing the data one more time. So even if you don't do anything else, even if you don't need a report, just tell your company or your IT guy, hey, store that data because we might need that data later. So if there is one take from this session, is this.
Greg, quick question. On that config file that you've got with the secret and tenant ID and things, is So you need to store that file somewhere on your system, obviously, for your scripts then to be able to access them. Is that the sort of safest way? Are there other options that you can
Oh,
store that
yes.
information?
Yeah, this is the simplest way. I'm not even encrypting the file, so that might be a problem because you will put there a service principal with admin read-only rights. So one option is you can put the service principal and let me try to show you how I use it. You can put the credentials on a database encrypted. You can encrypt use PowerShell to encrypt the file and at least encrypt the file to no one that grabs this file can read it. But one more time, this was the simplest solution for me to be easy to share it. So, for example, if I'm using the Azure solution, I would highly recommend to not even put in the configuration file the secret. So you should use something like Azure Key Vault to store the secrets. Like I think I have it here. Let me just show you. So if you have Azure, one of the things that you can use is the Key Vault. Let me where is that? Governance. So in here, I have a Key Vault where I configure the secrets, and then in my Azure function, I don't have the configurations there. So I'm the configuration. It's a config file, but it's not this one. Oh, not this one. Actually, I don't know. This one is not using the Key Vault. Maybe it's an older version, but I would.
Not serious. Yeah, carry on because I know time's running out.
Yeah, I would recommend to just use something like a Key Vault, or if you are using local files, if you are using the simplest solution, the config file, you can at least encrypt it.
Okay,
so
cool.
What I'm doing in the code is this is the first part. So I'm getting the config file over here, and then I'm using the config file as variable. So what you need to change is you just need to change the way to get that config file from a secure location, and everything will work. The config file is just a JSON. So, but this is the simplest solution to be able to run. So yes, I would recommend to have a more secure location for those, for the secrets, at least for the secret. So fetch activity, the script is actually not very complex. So to get the activity data, this is a 72 lines of code. So what I'm doing is I get the last date, and then I just do a cycle through since the last time I collect the data, and then I call the activity API, and I'm storing the data as a daily file. So every day, every file has the entire daily activity. So you can get data by the hour, but to keep this simple, every time I save the file, I have the entire daily operation for Power BI. Then the catalog. So the catalog, this is getting all the workspaces, all the data sets, all the data sources, all the users. It's using the new async API. We still need to do to get the users and the roles. I still need to use the old admin get groups API. This script over here is a little bit more complex, mainly because of the async API. So I need to call the async API, wait for the refresh to happen, then collect the data. It takes a little bit more time on the first time, but on the next time, because you can actually get all the changes, the workspaces that were changes since the last time. It's really quick, even on very, very large Power BI tenants. The largest one that I worked with was around 50,000 workspaces, and this runs in less than every day. The average runtime is more or less 10 minutes, so which is good. Now I have another script. It's the Power BI dataset refresh. It's splitted because there is no admin API, so I actually need to have a for each loop for each workspace and call the refresh API to get the refresh history. You can only get the last 100 refreshes for each workspace, but you have a lot of data, very valuable data in here: the start time, the end time, the exception if there is an error. So it's some data that is very valuable to collect. Then the Graph API. The Graph API script, it's very simple. So I designed a script that you can just call a command that's read from graph. You specify the query that you want from the Graph API and store it in the file. So this is the actual code that you need to run. In the end, it will store the data. I always store the data like this. So for each type, I'm always storing like year, month, day, and the actual files. Okay. So every time I run the catalog scripts, I'm taking a snapshot of the users and the subscribed SKUs for in each day. Something that you need to be aware of: every API that I'm showing you, it has throttling enabled. So if you call it too many times, so for example, the activity events, if you call it more than 200, if you do more than 200 requests per hour, you will get throttled. So Power BI won't reply to you, and you need to wait. So for example, 1 hour to do another call. On the API, on the scripts, I already have some API throttling handling. So if I detect that there is an error of 429, I will wait for those seconds and then I will call the API again. This is not a big deal because, for example, on the activity, I only call it, if I'm getting 30 days of data, I will only do 30 calls. But if you want to do things getting this by the minute, imagine that you want to get the activity by the minute, like a near real-time Power BI report, then this might be an issue for you because you will get throttled for sure. So anyway, we have the data. So next milestone, we have all the data that we need, and then we start by, so then the Power BI file that I will give you, it has all this logic. I just want to make you aware of the Power Query seems a lot of complex, but it's really not. So I'm just getting the catalog data and the activity data, but I've done this folder proxy technique. That is actually something that I would recommend you to know more about. I even have another session, the Power BI tips and tricks, where I talk about this folder proxy technique. That is basically, if I'm using the simple solution, I go to the Power Query and I uncomment the Power Query file. I have this file proxy query that is just a record in Power BI, and I uncomment the queries that gets data from the folder. If I'm doing this on a customer that has the data lake version, then I comment this one and I uncomment this one. And no, there is no easy way to have this as a parameter. So you need to actually change the code, because if you have both, then when you publish online, the gateway will fail to, or the data set will fail to refresh.
We'll have to have you back for that tip.
Yeah, you can see I have a link to a session where I speak more in detail about this, but the simple part is a file is always a file in Power Query. That's the notion that you need to have. So you can actually have, you can even use this technique to make your Power BI development faster. So imagine that you are getting data from SharePoint and it's slow because it's downloading, and you know that Power Query sometimes downloads the files more than once. You can work locally, and when you want to publish, when you are done with the development, you go to the file proxy technique and you swap the file proxy to the SharePoint. And all the other queries, so the technique is you do this file proxy and all the other queries connect to this one. So they don't actually, if you look into the catalog files query, it's not connecting to the data lake or the folder. It's connecting to the file proxy, and the file proxy is connecting to the data source that I want. Okay.
Nice, nice. Now, Rui, we're going to be wrapping up the official start time in a moment and folding into Q&A for people to stick around if they want to ask more detailed questions. You've got, as you said, this is more of a, to really get into depth of all the code and things involved is probably longer. Could you put up your slide for how you'd like to accept, emails for people who want to get these scripts? And then we'll do the official end, but everybody's free to stick around because we're going to go into our Q&A and networking piece where you can keep asking questions if you're able to stick around, Rui.
Yeah, sure. So just 30 seconds. So the data set, I'm sure that you all know about it. I will share the code. So I actually decided to split into kind of two data models, one for the catalog and another for the activity, just to keep things simple. The measures, no big deal. I don't have any complex measure over here. It's just sum and counts and distinct counts and stuff like that. The report, I already went into some details about the report. And you are done. In the end, I will share the script. So this is my context over here. So just drop me an email if you want me to share this with you. I will do it gladly. And I will also take this opportunity. And if you use this, oh, sorry, I don't know what's happening on my slide. So if you use this code, and if you go to this webpage, you can redeem 5 licenses. Or the first 5 that goes to this website will give away a license for the product that we sell the most, that is Power BI tiles, to refresh Power BI reports in PowerPoint or Word.
Nice.
And let's go to Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much for the main presentation. Everybody that's sticking around, I'm going to stop the recording, but you're encouraged to stick around. This really can keep going for as long as we want some active questions, as long as Rui's here to answer them, and he can dive into a little more detail if you have those questions. But I'm going to encourage you to turn on the cameras and talk a bit and network with your other members of the user group. So I'm stopping the recording. Thanks for that's kind of the official end, but don't run off. I'm going to be checking who sticks around. So I'll stop the recording. And at